All right, everyone. According to Yoav Gallant, he's the Israeli defense minister, Hamas has basically been completely disorganized and is badly degraded. I can believe this, actually. Israel has lost the optics war with regards to its fight against Hamas. That much is clear. Politically speaking, other than the United States government, there aren't a whole lot of other governments in the world that are backing Israel at this point. I mean, the optics of it are fairly poor when you've got a 2-to-1 casualty ratio, civilian versus actual combatant. It's not good optically when you're also potentially causing a regional war. But as far as the actual physical war with regards to Gaza, I actually believe this. Hamas has been badly denigrated. Their fighting force was only about 40,000 people to begin with, and probably about half of those people have been killed, along with most of the leadership of Hamas. The problem is that you also now have Hezbollah, Iran, and other regional actors potentially getting involved. Those are more significant fighting forces. If the IDF, for example, crosses over into Lebanon and does more than just border strikes with Hezbollah, Hezbollah has considerably more manpower than Hamas does. If you get into it with Iran, their feint last month with regards to, sending drones and missiles and so forth to Israel, most of those were taken care of by Iron Dome. But that was a feint. It was nothing more than a symbolic strike. Basically, hey, we reproach you, effectively. We have a problem with what you're doing. We're going to symbolically strike you. We know that Iron Dome's going to take care of it, so in the end, it doesn't lead to a regional escalation or anything like that. The problem is that Israel has violated the Camp David Accords by taking over the entire southern border of their nation, has gotten into a war of words, at least, with Iran. Hezbollah has been escalating its strikes on Israel, and Israel on Hezbollah targets as well. And so you risk a wider regional confrontation. You'll remember months ago, when the war first, in fact it was, I think, last year, when the war first began, the King of Jordan penned an op-ed, and it was actually collated on RCP, effectively condemning what was going on and calling for calm. The problem is that as the fighting continues, it becomes more and more dicey. It becomes more and more likely that you have a regional conflict, especially when your defense minister says, well, we've basically degraded Hamas to the point of disorganization. Okay, well then you've sort of achieved your goal. I realize there's still Hamas members and so forth, and that's unfortunate, but at some point you have to stop. But there's no brakes on the train, so to speak. It has become a real big problem optically for Israel. It's also becoming a problem for the United States. Because of the unequivocal support of the United States for Israel, politically speaking, we've become a pariah in some ways. The European Union, which I don't support anyway, but for what it's worth, generally supports Palestine. The Eastern Bloc generally supports Palestine. The United States is kind of left alone on this particular issue. You don't have to be Team Israel or Team Palestine to understand the nuance of the situation. That's what I wish people would understand more of. There's always nuance within sociopolitics. It doesn't really matter what's right or wrong. It matters what people perceive as right or wrong. And that's the long and short of it. And a lot of people don't seem to understand that. Israel could be justified in defending itself, but to what extent? For example, there were many hostages taken by Hamas when their paragliders came in and they were raiding border towns and things like that. How many Hamas members, and how many civilians, by the way, have to be killed before the bloodlust is satiated? The problem is that Netanyahu sort of painted himself into a corner. He had no choice but to react with decision. He had no choice but to react very forcefully to the situation, otherwise he would have been shit-canned. He had no choice. But then, once you fully commit and you say, well, I'm just going to rub Hamas off the face of the earth, I'm going to completely destroy them, well, then you're kind of in it to win it now, aren't you? But the problem is you can't really win it. Hamas is not going to disappear. You've killed off most of their leadership. That's wonderful. That's perfectly fine. More people will rise up in the wake because now you've destroyed pretty much everything in the Gaza Strip, and other people will say, well, you know, my cousin got destroyed, my mother got destroyed, my father, he got his legs blown off, now he's a paraplegic basically, I'm joining Hamas. And so you end up with a never-ending spiral where one side takes the upper hand, destroys the opposition, but then the opposition simply gains strength. It takes some time, but this is sort of a repeat cycle that we've seen for a very long time within this particular region. It's happened before, and it's going to happen again, unfortunately. The unfortunate part is that innocent civilians are going to suffer. Women and children, old men and stuff like that, people who are not, you know, they're not fighting age males or something like that. We can take it. We can take the stress of combat and shit like that. But children should not suffer. Women should not suffer, nor should they, by the way, be in battle. And I don't think that Hamas actually drafts women. I think they see them more as cattle, more as property. But that doesn't really exonerate Israel now, does it? In some of their actions. We've seen civilians being slaughtered. We have seen massacres on both sides, by the way. We've seen all sorts of terrible things. It's the way that war operates. But when does it end? I mean, it hasn't ended. It's been ongoing pretty much since the 1950s. Technically speaking, combat's been ongoing there for over 100 years. Or several thousand, if you look at history. There were a few brief moments when some empire would march in and restore order. Other than that, the entire area has been inflamed for an excessive period of time. I think that this will continue to be the case, unfortunately. Hamas probably is badly degraded, though, and I think that the Israeli defense minister is fundamentally correct. You've destroyed most of their leadership. You've destroyed a lot of their fighters. The problem is that came at the cost of tens of thousands of civilians. That's according to conservative estimates, by the way. The problem, again, being the next generation of people that rises up. You've got children that have been orphaned. You've got children that are missing, you know, an uncle, an aunt, maybe a mother or father or something. They're going to be more likely fodder once you inevitably withdraw for recruitment for Hamas. So then, you know, you buy yourself 10 years of time, basically. And Netanyahu, I think that's basically what he's doing at this point. He's saying, well, we've killed off a bunch of their leadership. They can't really coordinate attacks. We're hoping for no regional war, of course. We've degraded their ability to operate to the point where my political career is capable of being kicked can-wise down the road, and everything is perfectly fine. That appears to be the operative strategy. And this also happens in other countries, too. The United States has done this, like with Vietnam or something like that. The Chinese have done this, like with Vietnam. The Russians have done this, like with Afghanistan. Basically, you march in with overwhelming power, and you crush your enemy, but you make more enemies in the process. And so it's intergenerational. What you end up with is sort of a death spiral. Eventually you get exhausted and you can no longer fight at all. This is the problem of asymmetric warfare, by the way. Hamas tends to be an asymmetric force. It's very difficult for a symmetric standing military force, one with all the toys that make the noise, etc., to deal with guerrilla warfare. And that's basically what you're dealing with. And keep in mind, the Gaza Strip is really tiny. It's only a few cities and towns. It's a very small area of land. The IDF has managed to effectively corral the region. And they've got to deal with the West Bank as well. There have been raids over there, over settlements mainly. At some point, though, your people are going to get war exhaustion, and you're going to have to withdraw. It's inevitable that that will happen. It's just a matter of how much time it takes. The problem is sociopolitically, you've lost the optics war. Strategically speaking, Hamas has been badly degraded. The defense minister is not fundamentally incorrect. It does appear that that is in fact the case. But have you destroyed Hamas? Because that's what Netanyahu promised. He's going to wipe them out completely. No, you have not. What you've done is you've made tens of thousands of new recruits for Hamas who will join up. There will be a new leadership unless you completely obliterate them. And even if every leadership figure is completely obliterated, Hamas will still come back. It's not possible to completely destroy them. Netanyahu knows this, by the way. Again, I say this, I'm not Team Palestine or Team Israel. I'm Team America. I'm Team America first. But you can't get rid of them. You can't get rid of an ideology in that sense. God damn, the ancient pagans still exist too. Their ideology was almost completely obliterated by the Catholic Church, and they still exist. How the hell are you going to get rid of Hamas? Yeah, it doesn't really make any sense when you think about it. That's about all. Peace out.